What if the most terrifying horror isn't the monster in the shadows, but the person who swears that they love you? Today, I sit down with Emma E. Murray, author of Shoot Me in the Face on a Beautiful Day. Her novel takes us inside one of the most toxic relationships ever put to paper, where grief, abuse, and manipulation spiral alongside voyeurism, murder, and the horror that hides in plain sight. We dig into the psychology behind abusers and survivors, the thin line between love and control, and why the victims in her stories are never reduced to props, but given a voice even beyond death. So without further ado, I give you Emma E. Murray. Emma, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on this 25th day of July 2025. Your work came highly recommended by Andrew Adams when he joined me on the show. And with a title like Shoot Me in the Face on a Beautiful Day, I had to investigate further. What I found was a grand construction of one of the most toxic relationships I've ever seen committed to paper. Jealousy, insecurity, trauma, manipulation, the giving and withholding of love, physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, as well as garden variety murder, all portrayed with transgressive aplomb. So thank you for joining me on the show to discuss this fascinating work.
I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, so the book is about a woman named Birdie who is trying desperately to recover from the trauma of the death of her young son, Noah. She believes she's found the answer to her prayers in a handsome boyfriend named Russ, someone who seems to understand her pain and love her when no one else will. But in reality, he sensed the emotional vulnerability left by her trauma and is masterfully exploiting it through every form of abuse imaginable. And that's where the story begins. So the title, Shoot Me in the Face on a Beautiful Day, immediately signals emotional volatility and a striking contrast in tone. What does that title mean to you, and when did it arrive in the process? Was it the initial spark or the final touch?
So, well, first of all, funny enough, it was actually kind of in between those things because it was kind of just an untitled novel for a long time. And this scene that it comes from is about halfway through the book. And I write out of order. And so I actually wrote it much earlier than that, but it was still probably almost halfway through writing it that I got that. And I was like, you know what? After I wrote the scene, I didn't write that line thinking it'd be a title, but I was like, that would be a cool title. But I wasn't sure it would work as a title. So it was kind of just a working title. And it wasn't until it was done and people were like, I love that title, that I was like, okay, I guess that's the title. And so to me, what it means is, so it comes from a scene where Russ is actually being quite vulnerable, although very depressed, which is not his typical MO. And so I think it was not just about him being vulnerable, but also it says a lot about Birdie, even though it's not her that says it, about how the main characters, at least in the book, really they're looking for kind of like this flash of light in their life that gives them some kind of happiness. And that's all they really need. Honestly, they're kind of depressed people. So that's all they really want. And then they'd be okay with dying, honestly. And so it kind of brings that juxtaposition of those two things.
Yeah, you say flash, you could literally say the primer detonating on a bullet in a gun. um,
Right?
yeah, that's kind of when I read the scene that you're talking about and then thought about the title. I was like, oh, okay, so this is gonna kind of be the central build or something like that, but it actually was much more complex. So uh, did you ever at any point have the story ending with that dynamic?
No, actually, I did consider it, but it was never something that was seriously considered. Like, I think it was always kind of going towards the ending that it has. I think that was kind of in there from the very beginning where I wanted it to go.
Okay. Well, you kind of alluded to it just a minute ago. There's a social rot beneath the horror here: domestic abuse, systemic indifference, and the way violence hides in plain sight. So, was this always intended to be a horror story, or did your focus begin with exposing the machinations of neglect and control?
So honestly, both. Because I wanted for a long time, one of my very biggest fears is home invasion. And so I did know I wanted to write a home invading serial killer horror novel. And so it had that aspect of it, knowing it was going to be horror. But wanting to get into the complications of what a domestic violent relationship is like, I didn't honestly, I knew it was going to be horrific in ways, but I didn't really think of that half of it as being horror, honestly, until really people started reading it, like beta readers, and the way that they're relating to Birdie, and even whether it's them personally or someone they know, and how that's honestly some of the worst horror for a lot of people because it's so real compared to, although you could very much have a serial killer break into your house,
Uh,
but that feels more fanciful, whereas almost everyone has had some kind of experience with an abuser. And so I was like, wow, yeah, that might be more horrific.
yeah, there are serial killers. There's enough to give you pause and kind of freak you out a little bit. But yeah, toxic relationship. If you haven't yourself experienced or at least known one person, then you are probably in the top 1% percentile.
Or honestly, I think you're just oblivious if you
Oh
think
yeah,
that
there
is
you
what it
go.
is. I
Yeah,
think you do know somebody. I
maybe
can't
you're the
imagine
abuser.
existing. Exactly. Yeah, if that's you thinking I don't know anybody, then you need to examine your own
Yeah,
self.
yeah. Yep. Self awareness is key here, folks. Yeah, and you mentioned kind of just circling back to home invasion. That is, even though they're not. Well, I mean, they can obviously physically touch you if you're home, which I guess home invasion is technically they come into your home while you're there, but like even your possessions. Like I had my wheel stolen one time. And that, nobody touched me, but to walk out there and see my car up on blocks was like a violation, right? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
I'm sure it's 20 times worse if it's done in your house while you're gone. And then a straight home invasion, you're home, you feel secure in your house. And then all of a sudden you just, like this is the stuff that's supposed to happen when I'm out late and I'm in a sketchy area that I shouldn't be in, not in my own home.
Exactly. It's like where you feel safest. Where else are you going to feel safe except at home? Like if you have anywhere that feels safe. And that's why I think it is so scary.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you've described this book, and if I remember correctly, I think it's in the synopsis as being about, quote, what we are, how we became that way, and why. Do you see fiction, especially horror, as a kind of forensic tool for exploring human behavior?
I definitely do. I actually really love the way that you phrase that because that is very much what I'm actually setting out to do with every piece I write, from my short fiction to my novels. So I grew up with a dad that was a therapist and a mom that had a degree in therapy, although she was stay-at-home mom then, and reading the DSM. And then I ended up getting a degree in psychology. And so I've always been super fascinated with how people think and how we work, and especially abnormal psychology and the darker side of the human condition in general. And so everything I write, I think, boils down to character studies, no matter how plot. I mean, usually they are more character driven, but even my more plotty stuff and more actiony stuff tends to come down to what makes us unique and what makes us the same and what makes us tick, and really just like, why do people do the things they do? Because I'm just fascinated by people, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. People are the strangest animal. Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking, what's your psychology degree?
Yeah, I have an undergraduate degree in psychology, and then I have my master's in actually elementary education. I
Oh,
was a
okay.
teacher for a long time. So,
Nice. Yeah, my wife has a master's in industrial organizational psychology, which is relatively new. It's kind of like utilizing psychology in a human resources style
mhm.
environment. But yeah, she, just like you, abnormal psychology. That was like her favorite. She's a true crime junkie and all that too. So
Oh
she's
yeah.
attracted to the dark side as well. Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of us. My sister she ended up getting her degree in psychology, and she is like working as a therapist now. So yeah, it's just like a family thing.
Gotcha. Well, the story opens with a man stalking a woman named Luce, and what's terrifying is how ordinary the moment feels, kind of piggybacking off what we were talking about as far as a home invasion. She's scrolling late at night, the dog is nearby, her husband is just down the hall, and the man doesn't simply watch, he waits, imagines, and plots. So, what led you to explore that level of psychological intrusion and to show it from both perspectives?
So I, on top of being interested in just dark psychology, I've been interested in criminal behavior. Like you said, true crime totally all goes hand in hand, right?
Uh,
And so on one side, I really wanted to dig into the kind of person who is a voyeur, but a voyeur that has more evolved fantasies, and how a lot of serial killers do start by, being peeping toms, and kind of looking at the psychology of that and what would it be like. But at the same time, I really wanted to, and there's lots of women who are characters in the book that are victims, and I really wanted to look at them more deeply too, because it really bothers me in a lot of crime fiction that the victims are used almost like props for the antagonist to kill, and then it gives the reason for the detective or the hero to, defeat them, and they're not given as much humanity. And even though these women don't have a whole lot of, like, screen time, quote unquote, I wanted to make them very real, because the women that this happens to, in reality, they are real people that are living their life. And these are real things that happen to women all of the time. Like every day, women get stalked or peeped on or harassed or assaulted. And I just really wanted to get into both sides of that, so that the reader can kind of like indulge in the morbid fascination with the voyeur and the stalker and the serial killer, but also remember that these are real women with fully fledged lives, and they're not just, a stand-in body to basically be murdered or peeped on or whatever.
yeah, I never thought about that. I mean, I'm not much on to true crime, but I have watched like the reenactment dramatization style shows.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I guess it is kind of, I mean, violence sells. So I guess if you want ratings, you spend more time on the violent act itself and the hunt and so on. So yeah, for ratings, I guess it's easy to kind of strip the victims of their humanity. That's interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. It's fascinating. These people, like I said, like lots of people are into true crime and lots of people are into dark psychology. And so it makes sense that people are very interested in that. But I think it's easy to remove the humanity from victims. And that has always just left like a bad taste in my mouth. So I try really hard not to do that. So hopefully people don't feel like there's any exploitation in my work, even when it's violent, you know?
Yeah. Oh, we'll get into that. There's definitely not. I have quite a few questions about what you do to prevent that. Well, so as Birdie's abuse unfolds, the story also shifts into scenes of that same man who stalks and kills women with a chilling lack of emotion. He spends, or at least it seems like he spends, far more time stalking than he does killing. So would you say voyeurism is another form of control he uses before reaching the ultimate act of control, which is taking their life? Or is it more about, I know I've read like Ted Bundy, I think, would go back to the scene of his crimes and, excuse the vulgar reference, but would masturbate because just, I think the voyeurism before and kind of soaking it in after gave him a sexual charge. So would you say it's more about control or sexual charge or?
I mean, I think those things go hand in hand for most serial killers. Like, I think that it is prolonging the fantasy in a lot of ways. But so like the stalking and the voyeurism and all of that does kind of make it a more drawn out, enjoyable experience for people like that. But I also think that the control and the fear, especially in things like stalking, where, or maybe she knows someone's outside but doesn't see who, or just has like a bad feeling. I think that they get a real thrill out of that, which like amplifies the intensity for them. And that would help with the satisfaction of completing this murder versus like, I mean, that's the thing is you have to think about what it's like to be these really sick individuals who really enjoy that. And they obviously are going through a lot of work to make it happen. And so they have a fantasy in mind of how they want it to be. And they're trying to really make it as close to that as possible.
What, I may have missed it, but what time period does this take place in, give or take?
I am modern-ish times. I always try really hard not to place things in too much of a specific time period. Like my other novel definitely takes place in the early 2000s because people have like flip phone kind of thing. And it's just like very like, it's more obvious when it is. But this, I was trying really hard to make it feel now-ish, but
Okay.
but without giving people way too much like, details, especially because you also never know how many details to include about brands and stuff.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like modern times, contemporary times.
I don't know that I was about to say, you might accidentally use a brand that's out of style, but aren't Jean Co's back?
Things cycle back. It is crazy. Like my high school styles are back.
Yeah. Because you could say like, I believe they are. So you could say, you could set it in the 90s, but mention Jean Co's and be like, oh yeah, those are popular now.
I mean, if you're lucky, those things line up, right? Some things definitely like, I mean, if someone's walking around with like a Walkman, it's going to be very dated.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're going to do, I don't think, actually, you know what? My 10-year-old niece wanted a record player.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe she's just a cool person though.
Well, she definitely is, but like, it just shocked the hell out of me. Cause like, there's never been a generation that's more tech savvy, but yet she wants, to go old school, the retro, record player route, on vinyl. So yeah, my brother, he bought her, like he spent quite a bit of money and got her kind of a, it's not like it's antique, but it's modern day, but it's, I think it's an old brand. I can't remember, but anyway, yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Oh, it's really cool. I hope she just appreciates like the richer sound quality, as all my vinyl friends would tell you.
And don't tell them otherwise.
No, definitely not.
If you want to remain friends.
It matters a lot. If people are into vinyl, you do not say anything about that.
Whatever you say is correct, sir. Well, circling back to the book, the narrative then takes us into Birdie's domestic world with her boyfriend, Russ. His volatility is deeply unsettling, not just his rage, but his jealousy, tenderness, despair, and irritation, all shifting unpredictably. Did you see him as someone pretending to love, or is that emotional chaos a form of control in itself?
So I think Russ is a complicated person, as all people are. I think it's easy, just like it's easy to turn victims into just being kind of bodies, it's easy to turn criminals into just being bad guys, who don't have any complications. And so in my mind, Russ is very much like in the cluster B personality disorders. And I think he has several of them. And so that I think makes him more volatile. And it also makes his feelings complicated because I think that he does have things like he struggles with empathy for sure. And I think he obviously is very manipulative and is very much, using emotions to manipulate Birdie. But at the same time, there are times that he opens up and he does have things like suicidal ideation and talk about it. And I think that that is him kind of having also insecurities. And so those things can go together. I think that I don't know, it's hard to say he's pretending to love because it's hard to say how much he's really able to understand love in any kind of a healthy way because of the way he is. And so I think I don't know if he definitely, I don't think loves her in like a real way. But I would say that there are times that he does care about her somewhat, and at least how it pertains to him and how he's feeling. And so it's not completely manufactured.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm treading spoiler territory, but there is kind of a back and forth with Russ and Birdie about her getting an education, kind of like going through trade school to get a certification. And it seems like he's really uncomfortable with him not being financially in the one-up position. And I knew somebody whose father, parents eventually divorced, but it reminded me of this story. She said, yeah, my father would, when her mom was in school, would intentionally start a fight with her the night before she had an exam.
Oh, that is honestly classic kind of abuse, to be honest. Is like one way to keep them with you is to keep them financially dependent. And so, that's very typical in a lot of domestic violence relationships, actually, is that they don't want them to progress in their career or get an education or anything because, they don't want them to feel like they have any worth. And on top of that, they definitely don't want them to feel like they have the ability to escape.
Yeah.
So that closes that door kind of if you don't have any money, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned cluster B. Would that be like borderline personality or?
Yes, I think that Russ would, if he was diagnosed, of course. And I'm not able
He's
to
your
diagnose
character.
people.
You can diagnose him.
I'm not certified to diagnose people, but
well, he's your character.
I would say he has at least traits of borderline personality disorder, along with narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, which are all cluster B. And they can be like at the same time. So I could very much see him getting diagnosed with any or all of those.
Yeah. I'm not going to obviously say a word about it, but listeners at home, if you read this book, at some point you do get a very vivid view from Russ's point of view in the way he kind of thinks about things. So definitely read this book. Well, so that kind of whiplash, the volatility can make a person question their own reality. I believe, if I'm correct, people with cluster B personalities are just really adept at gaslighting you to the point where you think you're crazy. So how did you approach writing Birdie's perception of Russ, knowing her view is shaped by guilt, longing, and fear?
So I tried really hard to make Birdie feel like a realistic victim of domestic violence because one thing that I wanted to do coming into this book was I obviously don't want people who are victims to be like, blamed in any way. But I also feel like they're often portrayed as like completely innocent in every way, like these meek, very much like an angel kind of person who finally escapes. Usually that's the trope kind of the story, And so I was like, there are real people who have flaws. And so I wanted to give her flaws that made it obviously easier for an abuser to dig into those because that's what he does. And so I think that she, first of all, she has some cognitive dissonance that is growing, right? Like she is realizing that he's not treating her right, but it's kind of like you're so bought in that you have to convince yourself like that this was the right choice. You know, he does love me. And I think that is something that victims do often feel. And I am a survivor myself. So this is something that was a very personal thing that I wanted to write about, is that abuse sometimes doesn't, but often creeps in slowly and pushes your boundaries a little at a time. And you're putting up with more and more until you're suddenly at a point that you don't want to put up with it anymore. But you look back and you've done this to yourself, you feel, even though it's really your abuser manipulating you and pushing you farther and farther. And suddenly you are sitting with a lot of shame about that how did I end up in this situation? I'm not the kind of person that would let this happen. And so you're going to make up a lot of lies. And also on top of that, the cycle of abuse often comes back to love bombing to keep you there. And so, hanging on to that hope of like, well, they're really sorry, or look at how much they love me. And so she is trapped in this kind of, and she clings to him because she wants so badly to be loved. She doesn't love herself anymore because of what happened. And she has so much guilt and shame. And so she feels like his abuse is kind of like a punishment that she deserves on one hand. And on the other hand, she feels so completely unlovable that she is like, I could never let him go because he's the only one who could ever care about me. And so those two things together kind of make it almost impossible for her to break out of that. And I hope that makes her feel realistic as you really see her situation unfold and you start to understand why she puts up with all these things and why she feels the way she feels.
Yeah, it's like he goes full throttle to the point where she's like, yeah, this isn't good. And then when he realizes he's pushed her a little too far, he starts reining her in with being morose or apologizing, and then starts mentioning like, I loved you when nobody would, reminding her in her head that she's unlovable, not worthy of love. And then it's like the cherry on top that really reels her back in is apparently, according to the book, he's a really handsome guy. So she kind of goes into this, starry-eyed schoolgirl fantasy of, walking hand in hand, skipping rocks on the river, or the lake, I should say.
I mean, a lot of abusers are very charming. Yeah. And that's why people also will not realize that someone's in an abusive relationship unless that person confides in them, because they are charming to people outside of that. And they don't look like a bad guy, and that does play into it. I mean, like he says he loves her and he is handsome and, and it gives her a confidence boost that she desperately needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure that gets tiring, which is probably one of the reasons they try to separate you from your family and friends.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Isolation is like one of the first things that someone will do to try and make sure that you do not leave.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that Russ is kind of a collection of cluster B personality traits. So did you like consciously construct that, or did it kind of just evolve? Like, you kind of added a piece here and a piece there to facilitate his role in the story?
So I would say, I do have like a lot of time I've spent with the DSM. So it's going to kind of naturally come in for some of these like people who are, a little abnormal, to have things that I can recognize right away what's up with them. And that plus research I did, plus personal experience of people, especially people I've known with certain abusers that they had and stuff, really made me think that those personality disorders are often present, is what you see in people who are abusers. Like, because they do have, like with BPD, they have a fear of abandonment. They can have like wild mood swings and the need to control. And they can have real suicidal ideation, which can be used in a manipulative way, though. Not that they even intended to, because like I think BPD people often get demonized, which isn't fair. But like, honestly, all personality disorders get demonized whenever it really isn't fair, because there's definitely good people who have personality disorders. But Russ is not one of them. Yeah. But like, but then he also very much has like traits of like narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. in that, he lacks empathy. He has like, he thinks he's superior. He kind of thinks of other people as pawns. Like, he definitely doesn't think of Birdie as like a peer in any way, although he does like her, worshiping him. And, he has a lot of aggression, and he doesn't, he's just very emotionally detached in a lot of ways. And so, I kind of thought about those diagnoses and how you do see them with a lot of abusers, and kind of, he just naturally kind of came out how he is.
I imagine most of your readers are familiar with it, but in case some new readers are checking out the interview, may not know what the DSM is.
Oh yeah, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is like the psychology Bible, basically. It's got all of the diagnoses and their criteria, and it's super fascinating if you're into that kind of stuff.
Are we at number 5, I think?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Gets updated every once in a while, which I don't know if that's a good thing or an indication that things are getting worse.
No, it's a good thing.
Oh, okay.
Because they at one point the DSM had homosexuality as a
yeah.
disorder.
Yeah.
So there's definitely things that they start to figure out, these things should go together, or there's a new disorder that like has been kind of, there's sometimes you'll hear things that are diagnosed that aren't in the DSM yet. And sometimes they do get added at some point. And so, it's kind of just evolving like any science. I think that people sometimes forget because it is like, harder to quantify, but psychology is a science,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned homosexuality being in the DSM. I have read some splatterpunk that is so intense that I literally like, wow, I'm not even religious, but I feel like I should go to confession right now, But the last, if unless I'm not remembering correctly, the last time there was ever an obscenity trial for literature was for Naked Lunch from William S. Burroughs, just because it depicted homosexuality. Which is bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah. Naked Lunch, really? Yeah. I know. Like, there's way worse stuff than that.
Yeah.
Maybe not back then, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
they were very more censored.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully there's no more obscenity trials.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with like the way that politics are going, like you see the threats of book banning and stuff. So
yeah,
I think that's terrible. So hopefully not.
Yeah. Well, it'll just go underground. We'll be trading EPUBs and PDFs.
That's true. Splatterpunk will never leave.
No,
now that it's been unleashed.
I know. Yeah, you can't put the bloody toothpaste back into the tube.
Certainly not.
Well, one of the hardest things to write convincingly is the way abuse can mimic love. How did you ensure Russ's moments of caring came across as disturbing rather than redemptive? Because we can see from Birdie's perspective that when he's laying on the caring, loving, tender words and touch and all that, she's eating it up. But how it's written, unless I'm wrong, I feel like, anybody, including myself, would just get the ick from, his attempts at smoothing things over. Like, you can just tell, like, oh, this is pure manipulation.
Well, I'm glad that it doesn't come across as redemptive, because I worked really hard to make sure it didn't, because the last thing I wanted was, like, unlike my other novel, Crushing Snails, where I want you to have a lot of empathy for someone who's doing horrible things. In this one, I did not want readers to like Russ because he's not a person to like. You might kind of feel a little bit of sympathy at times for him because he is a person with complicated feelings. But I definitely, and I try not to write like flat characters, like just a bad guy. But I mean, he's obviously really messed up. And so I worked really hard to try and make it feel not redemptive, but I think it's what helps the reader buy into why Birdie would take these things, even though I think she doesn't even really believe it, is that she's so desperate to believe it. There are times where you're in such a bad place that even when someone is lying to you, like, I mean, I know there are people that have gone through this kind of thing, like, like your partner's cheating on you, for instance, and you really want to believe them that, oh, this lipstick is actually someone ran into me or something, and you're like,
Yeah.
I want to believe it, so I'm going to make myself believe it. And then the reader has that distance, so they're able to see both sides. Like Birdie is buying into it because she wants to, but as a reader, you can see that it's just manipulation.
Yeah. And, unless it's something like, I think is structural, like with the brain's chemistry, like something like schizophrenia, usually behavioral disorders don't just happen in a vacuum. So if you were to write another book or revise this one to where you included a backstory for Russ, what would kind of just, spitballing, what would you say his background would be?
I mean, I think he has to have some reason why he wants people to be under his control so bad. So I would think that he probably had not the best home life, probably, parents that maybe didn't care or maybe were a little abusive, and that he probably wasn't super well liked at school. And maybe he changed that later because he realized being charming got people to be manipulated by him, but that he started to realize like that, I need that kind of control to feel good about myself because everyone stomps on me. And I think, I mean, personality disorders are also something that's complicated because it's very much nature and nurture.
Yeah.
And so I would think that there's probably some things in his family, but I also think that it would be a lot from nurture, is that with borderline personality disorder, a lot of times they've gone through a lot of abuse, and that's what makes them have this fear of abandonment and this need to manipulate and lie no matter what it takes to keep somebody with them. And I think he definitely has those traits, is that he wants, even though he doesn't think of Birdie as being I honestly think he's had other partners that he definitely also abused, and he doesn't think of them as like equal to him, and that he wants them to be in a relationship that feels equal, but he still doesn't want them to leave because he needs to feel like he has someone that he has control over that loves him at the same time, even if he doesn't love them the same way. It gives him that feeling of being superior. And I think he definitely would have learned that in childhood, that is maybe how he feels the only way to get someone to care about you is to manipulate them and force them kind of to stay.
Yeah. And when it comes to Birdie's extreme grief from the death of her son, what cuts deep is how Russ uses the grief against her. So what kind of drew you to the dynamic where the abuser appears to be the savior? Because when Birdie is recounting the way they met in that bar, it's almost like the heavens opened up and he just fluttered down on angel wings,
So, I mean, unfortunately, this is just the truth, is that people who are abusers are really, really good at finding people who are vulnerable and emotionally fragile and taking advantage of them. They have like this like crazy sixth sense of picking up on those people. And those are people that they can easier, like, first of all, they can talk to you and kind of figure out, do you have a healthy support system? Like, she would have probably looked terrible because she was in so much depression from her grief. Like, there are things that would show him she's not confident. She doesn't have this, network. And those are things that would be like kind of cluing him in that this is someone that he could take advantage of. And that's true for abusers. And then they can fish out your insecurities. And her being really willing to share with him about her grief, she didn't realize that she was like giving herself on a silver platter to him, because he was like, instead of actually helping her work through it, was like, this is perfect. I can very much be your savior and help you in a lot of ways. And then you owe me because you're a bad person, because I already know you think you're a bad person, even though she's actually not,
Yeah. Yeah. So when she goes to I guess it's like a grief support group with the woman that she works with, is the part where she is like the accusations are leveled at her for being culpable for his death, is that just her feelings being kind of projected out to them? And then, or was that literally what was going on? Were people really rising up against her?
So So I think that in this particular scenario where they're at the grief thing, the person who says that is someone who has also lost a child. And so I think that that person would have actually said something like that because people are very judgmental and it's supposed to be a judgment free zone. But that would be something that someone who lost a child would be like really attuned to, is hearing news about something like a child dying. And there would be a lot of anger whenever, and this is true, is that people who have lost a child out of something completely out of their control would be angry whenever they hear that there was maybe something someone could have done to save their child, you know, and even angrier whenever it's like even worse case than Birdie's, like, you know, when someone killed their own child or something. And so there would be a lot of pain and judgment from that person. And so I think that that's what happens, unfortunately, is that Birdie then takes it even worse because she thinks everyone thinks this about her, even though it's not everyone. But it's like kind of your worst fear coming true is that you already think so bad about yourself. And then someone's like, oh, I know about you and you're bad.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. The book is filled with physical reactions. You've got hands trembling, pupils dilating, bodies leaking and breaking down. Was that level of physical detail meant to act as emotional truth the characters themselves couldn't express, or something different?
Yeah. So, in my opinion, people often don't have a lot of self awareness about their actual emotions. People think they do, but they often don't actually analyze, how am I actually feeling? Why am I feeling this? And so our physical reactions do betray how we're feeling, even if our words and our mind won't. And so I often put a lot of unspoken communications between my characters where they are doing like physical things that maybe they're not even aware of, like you said, like trembling or your pupils dilating, to kind of show the reader something that's true about the character without the character necessarily even knowing it, or something that they don't want to tell because they're hiding it, because that's just honestly true. Because people do things all the time that give them away, you know, like how they're, I mean, it's not accurate, but there are ways to show if someone might be lying, and they're not always true, but they're true a lot of the time, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like a polygraph test, like, you know.
Yeah. Like inadmissible because they're definitely beatable or failable by accident, but also they're often right. You know, they're just not right enough that you're going to let that be actual evidence.
Yeah, you can't base it on whether a person goes to jail or gets executed, but you know, jobs like police and fire use them for screening for employment. So I actually knew a guy that administered polygraphs, and he said one of the biggest problems is people just get confused. Like they start thinking back, and they're like, wait a minute, maybe, you know, like it's something that's clearly a no, but they get so worried that like maybe it's not true and they're just not remembering it, but somehow their body is going to do, you know, so like they literally
no, that's anxiety, dude. Yeah. I get that. I would be like, did I kill somebody? I don't think so, but like, what if I was sleepwalking or something?
Exactly. So he literally has to, he's like, okay, now, before we even do this, have you smoked marijuana in the last 7 years? Not ever within the last 7 years, because that throws them off. Because they're like, oh, I've smoked weed. Oh, my God, you know.
I know, right?
Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, I'd probably be the same way. But it's since I wasn't something I went through, I can laugh about it.
Well, polygraphs are super interesting. I'm glad they're not admissible, but they are really interesting. I love watching like videos of people doing their polygraphs, and those examiners are so smart, like how they really get you to trip up on things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Not my idea of a good time.
No, I definitely would never like to do that. Like, even if it was like all really easy questions, I would be so nervous just being hooked up to it.
That would be terrifying. Well, circling back to the book, from early on, we read scenes told through the eyes of a decomposing corpse. There's a slow, haunting revelation about who this woman is and what she wants to tell us. And I just, I know the common question, what inspired you to do this? What inspired you to do that? Well, I can't help but ask you, what inspired you to give a voice to someone who no longer has one, and in such a brutal yet poetic way? Because even though you're talking about decomposition, you're talking about carrion, munching away at the flesh, you do it in a brutal yet poetic way.
So, I mean, on one hand, I am personally very interested in decomposition. Like, I just think it's really fascinating, actually. Like,
Uh,
I someday would love to get invited to like a body farm, and I would be so respectful. I just want to like learn, honestly. I would love to go back for free to college just to get a bunch of degrees and definitely criminology type things. I think that'd be fascinating. But I also just very much like, as a longtime consumer of true crime content, like I said, I really wanted the victims to kind of have it always makes me sad that their stories, they're cut off so violently, often young, and they kind of just become, an object, a piece of evidence, an exhibit in a trial, and especially women who are not found until they're greatly decomposed or never found at all, they just feel forgotten in a lot of ways. And so I really wanted to write that character. It'd been something that had kind of been in my mind for a while, that I was like, I don't know what I want to do with this, but I really want to write that. And I didn't want her to be like a typical ghost or like watching from the afterlife, I've definitely read books that did those well, but I was like, I want it to be something that's not religious in any way. I wanted it to feel very visceral. And so that's why there is the very brutal decomposition, but at the same time, she is very much a character that you get to know and hopefully care about. I really love her. She's actually probably my favorite character in the book. And so you care greatly about her journey and what happens to her, and she wants to be found so bad, and you're really rooting for her to get found because she needs that closure, and you care about like, who is she, because she doesn't remember who she is at first. And so I thought it was just like a really interesting way to kind of think of those victims and kind of make you really in a weird mindset kind of about it.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of a step up from decomposition, the body horror period is horrifying, but strangely beautiful. And what I thought was interesting is every time the killer murdered someone, the death was experienced from the perspective of the victim, from the beginning of the attack and sometimes all the way down to where there's nothing left more than just electrical activity in the brain after the person's technically clinically dead. So what drew you to the perspective of the victim in their final moments? Was it a way to explore empathy, or was it more about pushing the horror into internal, inescapable space?
So for me, I, like many people, am obviously very afraid to die. And so, like, I think that that is kind of the most horrific thing you can think about. I mean, I guess like I have no mouth and I must scream is even worse than death. But like, for the most part, like, I think that that does bring the horror really home because you're with the victim. And so you're having to think like, this is what it would be like. And that is very emotional and scary in a way. But I also very much was trying to bring empathy to the victims. Like I said, I was trying to make them human. And I think the more that you're close to them, like the closer you get to the victim, the more that you really can empathize with them. And so instead of seeing it as just kind of a fun read, it's like I never really write things that are fun.
Hmm.
Like I always kind of write things that are like trying to make you uncomfortable so that you can really sit with things and think about them and really think about why you feel certain ways about different things.
Yeah. Yeah, the ones especially that involved strangulation, like I've been in a training course where I had to get out from under this thing that was floating. It was a parachute, basically. It was for skydiving, and they were teaching you if you land in water, you've got to get out from under your parachute because if you come up underneath it, it sucks itself shut over you. So you've got to like grab the seam and follow it out. Well, it was in a pool. It was in a safe environment, but I hadn't swam in a while, so I had a lot more confidence than I should have had. And I mean, I started like, oh my God, where's the end? Where's the, like it was time for a breath. And so like it made the way you described it in the book, it made me think of what would it be like to be at that point and no relief? What happens past that,
Yeah.
It's insane.
I mean, I will say, at least from what I've heard, a lot of drowning victims will say that they found a lot of peace, actually, like people who were resuscitated, and that it wasn't so scary. So hopefully
Well,
that
yeah.
might give you a little bit of like,
Well,
peace about it. Like,
I've also heard that when you're on the verge of death, your pineal gland just floods your body with like DMT, or your body just starts dumping natural opiates. I don't know if I
that
believe.
seems like it doesn't always happen, though. It happens to some people and not others. And I'm always like, oh my God, I hope that happens to me. If something terrible happens, so that I'm just high and then I die.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd love to go out Lucy in the sky with diamonds, but I have a feeling it might not be the way I go. So, well, so this is part of the book that, it's a simple statement, but it really just hit me hard. So near the end, Birdie says something chilling to justify a terrible act that she's kind of been conned into committing. Quote, "I've already lost my right to humanity." And I mean, simple, short sentence to the point, but Jesus, it's a gut punch. So when writing a line like that, do you recognize its weight in the moment, or does the impact hit you later, like when you're editing or something like that?
So for me, definitely later. So I write out of order. And so I usually, when I have multiple POVs, which I like to do, honestly, it's one of my favorites, I usually try and write kind of as many points, like chapters that are a certain point of view all at once, because I like to really get into that character instead of kind of skipping between, which is often how it ends up. And so I was with Birdie a lot and wrote almost all of her chapters like together. And so I was so with her that it really just was, I tried so hard to just kind of have what she would think and what she would feel come out onto the page. And so I was so deep with her that honestly, there are several scenes and lines that were shockingly like intense whenever I look at them again, because you're so deep in that like really dark place with her that like I don't see it in the moment really, because I am just trying to be faithful to how she would feel.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of fun though to like reread something and be like, oh, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. Man, there's just, I don't know why that, I mean, I do know why, but, just so simply put, like, it's like self-erasure,
I know, poor Birdie. I really
Birdie.
love her.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't love her, and that's okay.
I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
It's a morally gray character. Nobody's, if somebody who appears to just be above reproach is a really good liar,
Right? I love morally gray characters. Yeah. I exclusively write them. And so I understand when people don't like them. That's fair.
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to feel conflicted. It would, it'd be kind of a boring story if somebody was all the way good and all the way bad. You might as well just watch a Avengers movie or something.
I mean, people like that. That is why we have like those kind of stories. Exactly. A lot of comics and stuff are very like good versus bad. And I'm like, I don't want that, but if you want that, I respect it.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, if the reader walks away from this story haunted, what would you want them to be haunted by?
I mean, the obvious one is about domestic violence. And I really, really wanted this story to show that it's not so easy to leave. And I know people say that, but people still, you see that kind of judgment all the time. And people be like, why wouldn't she just leave? Or like, whenever he did this, I would have left, or, this would have been my line. And I really wanted to get into that psychology of why do women not leave, and how do they stay in these relationships sometimes for years and years or never leave. And so I think that hopefully people walk away haunted by that, by realizing that these women aren't, oh, well, it's their own choice and that they deserve it because they didn't leave, and that they would realize that it's more complicated than that. But I also really would like when people to just be haunted by the plight of women in general, because I think especially men, sorry, but like don't realize sometimes, like I've had people, like men will make fun of women for carrying keys between their fingers or being, weirded out by a guy just looking at them a lot, and, maybe making sure their blinds are all the way closed. And you often hear like, oh, you're overreacting, nothing's going to happen. You're being paranoid. You shouldn't listen to so many true crime podcasts. Well, that might be a little true, but like, but it's the thing is, these things happen to women all the time, every day. And there's no way you don't know a woman who hasn't been like stalked or harassed or peeped on or something terrible that has made her feel like she needs to do this. And it's not just in their head. Now, some people, you do have to find like a line, because some people take it too far and are living in fear all the time. And that's definitely not a enjoyable experience. And so I don't want anyone to feel that way. But I think that I would like people to, especially men who read it, to be haunted by the idea that this is something that really does happen. And that's why these women are supposed to seem so real, is that they really are just, girls scrolling on her phone or going to work or grocery shopping after a long shift, and that these things do happen. And it's not always so obvious that they're going to happen. It's not always like you said, like in a dark alleyway, and it's like putting yourself in a really terrible situation. Like that's definitely not how it normally is.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with my wife and my mother-in-law, but they were together and they both almost got carjacked, and then my mother-in-law almost got kidnapped right out of a mall parking lot.
Oh my god, that's really scary. Yeah. Oh my god.
In Texas, where there's a good chance somebody's carrying a gun, and it still happens.
Well, everybody has a gun pretty much in Texas.
Yeah.
Like, it all cancels out. Everyone's just having like...
Oh, God.
That's super scary for them. Oh, my God.
Yeah. It hasn't happened in... Well, shit, I'm not even going to say it out loud. Anyway.
I know, right? Don't jinx them.
Yeah, I'm not going to tempt fate. Well... It was a very powerful book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Listeners at home, buy it, read it, review it. And I wanted to ask you kind of about your collective work as a whole. How often does body horror appear in your writing? And do you think it offers a way to express psychological pain that language alone can't reach?
So I do have often a lot of body horror and gore in my work. It varies. I have ones that are not so bad, but typically you can expect there to be something that's going to probably gross you out in my book. Although not splatterpunk level, like, but I do think that it's a way to show pain that is hard to describe. Like it is more visceral for the reader often, because like it is hard to put yourself in people's shoes. And so something that is very painful and physically grotesque can really help make that connection between things that are also like emotionally like really intense and full of turmoil. And so I think it helps to bring that together. And that's what horror really does well, is to examine things that are like, psychological and are kind of deeper and more difficult to describe. And by taking like a lot of physical things, you can bring those together to really look at it.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your short story collection, The Drowning Machine. Are there common threads between those stories and Shoot Me in the Face?
So,
can I abbreviate it like that? I wasn't telling you to shoot me in the face.
No, I know. My God, that's actually the funniest thing, is that I did not want to like abbreviate it as shoot me or shoot me in the face, but like everyone's like, you have to. It's so long. And so I know I'm always like, please don't actually shoot me. Like,
just complete random non sequitur. Shoot me in the face.
I know, right? So I would say that The Drowning Machine and Shoot Me in the Face both deal very much about obsession and grief. And they both feature grieving mothers who have lost children or have children that are placed in dangerous situations. And I mean, that's partially because I am a mom. And so I also have OCD. And so a lot of my intrusive thoughts are revolving around something terrible befalling my daughter. So it definitely it's something I often write about. And it's a way for me to kind of safely explore those fears. And also something I feel is kind of universal, even if you're not a mother, like the love and relationship between a mother and a child is something everyone understands. And so it's kind of an easy thing for me to go to. But I mean, I feel like I also kind of explore those things in other relationships too. I think it always kind of comes back to that because other stories, not all the stories in my collection are about kids dying. I promise. I know people sometimes that is like a huge like red flag for people. I'm like, no, no, no. You can read this collection. You might skip some of them, but like it might not be it for you if that's a huge trigger for you. But like it's not like that's all it is. It's just intense grief. But there are, you know, like it's a way to kind of look at complicated and fucked up relationships between partners or parents and children, siblings, friends, even with yourself. And I think that kind of a theme that's in all of my work is that kind of with yourself, that fight between loving and hating yourself, which most people struggle with, is that you might have things like shame or guilt over certain decisions or regret or vulnerability, you know, and that those are things that we have to overcome, and that those are things that you're going to find in all of my work. And definitely in both of those pieces, they very much deal with that kind of like regret and shame, you know, which I think worse than a lot of horror, honestly, is like shame. I'd rather kind of outrun like a killer, you know, than have something super shameful that's like hanging over me all the time.
Yeah, shame's like a glaze you can't scrape off of yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Well, if somebody reads Shoot Me in the Face on a Beautiful Day and really digs it, to what work would you direct them next of yours?
So I would say if they hadn't read my first novel, Crushing Snails, that is what they would want to read next. Although I will say I have content warnings on my website. They are kind of spoilery. I have them for all of my works, but I definitely, if you're sensitive to certain things, I mean, a lot of my work contains some intense triggers. So I would check that out first. But both of those, I think those novels actually go together a lot more than I realized at first. And so I kind of love that they both came from Apocalypse Party, because I think they both explore how abuse changes us and how being pushed down and degraded kind of makes you want to have control, and how control is kind of enticing, even though it's harmful. And so I think that they look at it like almost like two sides of the same coin, because they're looking at very different kind of characters, but who both are dealing with really, really terrible situations, and how do they cope? Like, and I think even though hopefully the situations aren't super relatable for everybody, since they both have some extreme things. I mean, they're both relatable in some ways, but they have some extreme stuff. But I think most people would feel like they can empathize with the characters. And I feel like they go together super well as novels. They almost feel like a duology, even though they're not, because they're not related, you know?
Uh-huh. Well, I am a big fan of your literary and visual aesthetic. Was that aesthetic basically just you from a young age, or did it come gradually? I know you mentioned having OCD. Sometimes severe anxiety can kind of keep you in a shell where you don't quite know who you are. So was your aesthetic in general, branching off to your art, to your personal style, all of that, did that involve breaking through expectations, or is that just, that's me, that's how I was born?
I mean, I definitely think I did have to kind of let go of what other people think of you, because I definitely did struggle. I mean, I was actually bullied really badly in school. And so I had to really come to terms with the fact that even when I tried to fit in, I didn't really. And so that kind of helped me to find who I am. And now I'm very confident in who I am and how I portray myself and my works and how they all kind of come together. And I think I've always been this person. I mean, I've always had dark interests, and I've always kind of been a weirdo, you know, but now I am unabashedly a weirdo. So,
Well, isn't that the you said you were originally from Austin? Isn't that the motto? Keep Austin weird.
Oh, hell yeah. 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 Austin has changed a lot, though. It's not nearly as weird as it used to be.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I still love it though. Like, but just a lot of the cool places have closed, and they've opened like a lot of chains and stuff. And I'm like, come on, Austin used to be really unique. Like,
Yeah. I think that's anywhere though, isn't it? Or is there
I
still?
know, but
Yeah.
it was like Austin was this like kind of hidden gem for a long time. I think that's why it took so long for it to really blow up because I mean, it was
Yeah.
not a super big city for a very long time, even being the capital.
Yeah.
So,
A lot of industry has moved there as well. So it's kind of
yes, yeah.
kind of getting the outskirts are kind of getting an industrial landscape.
Oh yeah. Like, and it is, man, it is a massive city now. It's crazy how much bigger. Like you can drive through it and it's basically like, I mean, I don't know if you know the cities around there, but like Buda Kyle all the way up through like Cedar Park is Austin. And that's like an hour drive. Like, so it's like Houston now, dude. Like, no,
It's
that's too
branching out.
big. Houston's too big.
I guess they've got plenty of area to annex, right? Kind of.
There is a lot of nothing
Yeah.
kind of around Austin.
Yeah, it may get bigger.
Soon it'll be Austin all the way down to San Antonio. That's what's like really happening. It's just going to become like a weird like Dallas Fort Worth, like
big metroplex. Yeah.
yeah, kind of dystopian.
Oh, it's what did they say? 2040 is when we'll hit the techno-capitalist singularity. So yeah,
Oh, I'm glad to know that. Thank you.
it's just something to look forward to.
Yeah, I'll mark it on my calendar.
Yeah, consciousness will cease to reside in biological life.
Great.
Let me know if I can brighten your day in any other way.
I mean, I guess I'm not helping with my super sad books.
Well, that'll be the one thing that keeps the biological life going is our writing and other art that we produce. It'll be like the farmers markets. You know, everything else will be mass produced, but you can go to the farmers markets to get the organic stuff.
Yeah, I don't think you can ever stamp out the art. Like, yeah, artists will continue. So I'm at least try and be optimistic.
Speaking of art and the art we have been speaking about, would you be willing to read a passage from the book?
Yes, I will. Hold on, let me drink some water really quick. Okay, so I'm going to read like the very beginning, which is, it starts with, it says fresh because that is the very first stage in decomposition.
Yeah.
And so it's just body at first as the narrator because we don't know who she is. Veins of leaves lay rough against my tongue, dried blood sticking them together in a gluey, immovable clot, so thick that I wouldn't be able to breathe if I still could. No, not a breath of life is left inside me, and yet I remain. It's been hours since he left me here. I'm not quite sure how long, but the first rays of dawn creep into the darkness, diluting it to watercolor gray as the sun awaits its debut. My eyes, left open and already shriveling into themselves, can still perceive the world, and yet I'm dead. There's no pain, but I can feel the way my muscles have begun to stiffen, my organs to consume themselves as their cells desperately try to live on, doomed to decompose inside me. I can even feel the way my skull lies shattered, open to the air, icy fingers of wind raking through my mashed brain matter with each gust, leaves blowing in and penetrating the most sacred secret of places. I don't understand it, but already I've accepted it. There's no other option. And there is strangely no panic, not even a trace of fear. I suppose that left me alongside the pain in my final breath. It was dark for a while. I don't know how long, but when I came back, I wasn't myself anymore. I don't remember anything before the man. I would love to mourn the life I surely had, something nebulous beyond my unexplainable consciousness. The friends and family I might have had that loved me and I loved in return, the career, accomplishments, maybe pets, maybe children. But there is no pain of any kind, so I stay calm. Only the tingle of absence nags at my brainstem, reminding me that I once had a life. Something beyond these woods, these leaves, this dirt lodged in my ears and crammed into every crevice I fought to protect as he ripped off my pants and tore me open. The farthest back I can remember is a blurry struggle on the path. I'd been walking through the woods. I don't remember anything about my life before the man appeared, lurking ominous in the foliage when I noticed him. Before he attacked. Then there was pain, so much pain. Though I cannot feel, there's an ache that lingers in the air around me. So profound was the suffering. I screamed, dragged my nails across his flesh, dug my teeth into his shoulder, and listened to him yelp like a wounded dog. He pinned my legs, shredded me to pieces with his hands, his body. The branch was too much, and I would have expired no matter what as the blood poured out, puddling around me, but he wouldn't leave me to die in peace. He removed it, struck me again and again, bashing my head until it broke open and every trace of life had been snuffed out. I was gone, the darkness swallowing me, but then I came back. I hope this isn't what eternity is, laying broken and gathering flies with the sickly sweet smell already emanating from deep within. There must be a reason. I'll be patient. What else can I do but wait? The warmth has all but left me. It's a strange sensation, your own body cooling to an ambient temperature. The tickle of grass against your cheek gone, no need to brush it away. Your ear welcomes a stray ant. Absurd to be conscious. Surreal to watch the smearing of pink and orange beyond the piney crowns, branches scratching at the air the way my nails wrenched through his skin. I'm thankful that his poor attempt at hiding me didn't obscure my vision. I couldn't stand it if I couldn't see. It's the sole thing I have to hold on to now. The blood has settled, coagulated in dark spots against the ground. I can't see it, but I can feel the heaviness, the thick clotting inside, bacteria already proliferating and taking me over. A glimmer of memory stirs in my mind. This isn't how I imagined it would be to die. I thought there'd be a bright light, maybe an afterlife, or maybe nothingness, the faint memory of relaxing in Shavasana, and the quiet humming of my brain as I'd imagine I was a real corpse. Breathe as shallow as possible, feel the insects running over my legs, across my open eyes, scavenger birds circled overhead. It was relaxing in a morbid way, but this is not. There is no panic, only a deep, aching sadness, a hollow mourning and a longing to be found. I miss a life I can't remember, but I know there were people I loved and that they're already missing me, wondering why I haven't come back. Find me, I whisper in my broken mind, scattered across the leaves. Find me. I love it.
Very nice.
Thank you.
I don't know if you know it. I have a live studio audience here. They're out of camera view. They've been drinking White Claw for like 4 hours. So
I'm sure that's what they wanted to hear. Nicely buzzed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I know you are a busy woman, so last question. Outside of the page and the horror, what does the life of Emma E. Murray look like?
So, I'm a mom, as I said, to an almost 5-year-old. I can't believe she's almost 5. And so I'm a stay-at-home mom. So I actually spend a lot of my time in some of the lightest parts of life, like
it's probably
childhood
a good thing.
Fun. Yeah. It very much balances out the time that I come to sit at my computer and write and get into the really darkest parts. And so I'm at very extreme points at any given day, and so that's kind of a big part of my life, obviously, is being a mom and then being a writer. And I also love to play D&D. I'm a nerd. I love hiking in nature, especially that actually really helps with creativity. I do art and stuff, but nothing is really my thing, like writing. So that is so much of my life, to be honest. So when it's like outside of a writer, it's actually like, that's my favorite thing other than seeing my daughter thrive. So I'm simple in that way. I just want to tell stories.
Well, I'm sure you can afford to get them as dark as possible if you have your daughter as the palate cleanser.
Oh yeah, and she's so cute. Yeah, and like we just watching Bluey and playing with Play-Doh and stuff, and then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go write about this murderer.
Yeah. All right, sounds good. Well, Emma, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been so fun. Thank you so much for having me on. I love all the questions.
Absolutely. So as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you would like to plug, reiterate, or let your readers know about?
So one thing is, I personally am donating a portion of the sales of everyone who buys Shoot Me in the Face on a Beautiful Day. So when I get my royalties, I'll be donating a portion of it every time for as long as it's in print to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is this amazing hotline, and it's also a website, but like it's there to give women or anyone, could be anyone who's experiencing domestic violence, but it is majority women, like help. And like, you know, it gives them just all kinds of different resources. And I think it's actually really so amazing. Like if you go there, even right away tells you like, there's ways that your web history can be like tracked, like, you know, and it gives you like an escape button right away for people who can't look at it for very long because someone, you know, their abuser could be over their shoulder at any moment and stuff. And I just think they're really amazing that they're there all the time to help people. So hopefully people do buy Shoot Me in the Face on a Beautiful Day. It comes out August 26th from Apocalypse Party. And so, yeah, that. And then if anybody wants to pick up my collection, The Drowning Machine and Other Obsessions, or my other novel, Crushing Snails, or my novelette, Win the Devil, which is my least gruesome one. It's a very like, you know, revenge tale.
Ease your way in there.
That really, though, is like way less gruesome than the other one. So if you're like, I kind of want to check you out, but I'm not sure if I want to read something so intensely dark, this one is probably the quote unquote happiest one.
It's a gateway.
I just appreciate any readers at all. I mean, that's what I love to do is write, and all I really want is for people to read my stories. So thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Listeners at home, all links are in the description. And Emma, thank you again for joining me. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest authors and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.